Here we are, episode 2. How you feeling?
Ah, Mangifi. I'm here and I'm feeling like I got an opportunity to move forward. Uh, there's room for blessings. There's room for exploration, growth. I'm looking forward to meeting whatever challenges lie in front of me, man. That's the deal. So as long as we're here, like he's saying, Willow, Mangifi. As long as I'm here, I no matter what. So I guess that indicates that in spite of all the drama that's going on right now, I'm blessed to be alive and to have family. Yeah. So I'm good.
That's what's up. That's what's up. All right, that's good to hear. That's good to hear.
And you?
All is well. All is well. Practicing safe distancing, washing hands, wearing a mask, things like that. Just trying to stay healthy, take care of the fam, stuff like that. So I'm chilling, man.
In fact, I was wondering if I should put on my mask for the show.
God, I think we more than 6 feet away. Oh yeah, you gotta put your graphic on.
Yeah, man. Yeah. There it is. There it is.
Yeah, man.
It's my signature. People know, but this ain't Tele-Live-Vision. This is InfoVision, Spirit, Harlem Village Podcast.
Back at it. Just to piggyback off of our last episode, both of us had homework to do. So do you want me to go first, or you want to go first?
You go first.
All right. So I do want to let you know I did 2 out of the 4. So of the homework assignments. So I did not watch Superfly, but I listened to the soundtrack. I did not listen to Band of Gypsy, but I did listen to Electric Ladyland.
Oh, the whole all 4 sides?
Well, it's like tracks.
Yeah. So it's a bunch of tracks.
Yeah, so, it's like 20 tracks on at least the streaming site that I used. So I listened to all 20.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah, I let it play. So for Electric Ladyland, at first I was going to tell you that all these songs are like short. Like the first couple tracks are like 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes, maybe less than that. So it's almost like they got in a little riff and they caught a vibe and they just, let's do something else. So I was like, all right. But then Voodoo Child came on and that's 15 minutes. So I was like, all right, so that thought process is out the door. I was surprised about how many tracks I actually heard already. Like Crosstown Traffic.
Yeah, that's that. I like that one. Yeah, that's the. Yeah,
I've heard that. So I liked my least favorite song is Little Miss Strange.
Yeah.
It's like it's all right, but it's not all that. Gypsy Eyes, and there are a bunch of other tracks that I did not all write down, but I enjoyed that album, so I thought that was cool. Superfly is a classic.
Yeah. 9
tracks. Yeah. Everything is a banger, even the instrumental.
Yeah. What do you mean even? You said you're not used to listening to a whole lot of instrumental music. That's what that is, right?
Yeah, most of if we get the instrumental, people want to rhyme over it. So it's like let me put my lyrics on it. But so he has like 2 tracks on there that are just instrumentals, and then the rest of the 7 are actual songs. And listening to that album, like that was my first time listening to it in its entirety. But throughout my life, I've heard that album.
Yeah,
it's been used in movies, commercials, and different TV shows. So I'm like, every time a song came on, I was like, I know this. like, I, I mean, and for it to only be 9 tracks, there's no fillers. There's no, because one thing that's most common now, and this is something that I liked about this album is a lot, maybe not so often now, but a lot in the 90s, early 2000s, the first track was the intro.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so used to having an album like ease into it, letting you ease into an album. Whereas with Superfly, he comes out the gate with a banger.
Mm.
And so my thought process now is give me the music. Start off from the top. Let me hear what you got. I don't want to hear, I mean, sometimes intros are clever, but for the most part, I'm like, nah, go straight in. Especially if you got something like that. I want to say, one second, let me go to it because I want to make sure I quote myself properly. The first track is Little Child Running Wild, which I've heard numerous of times. Like they use that a lot. I've heard that. Now I know I've heard that on the TV show, like multiple times. So yeah, you come out the gate with that. Then you got Pusha Man, and then Freddie's Dead, like back to back to back. I was like, oh yeah, this is. I don't know. I was trying to compare it to a hip hop album that came out the gate like that. I couldn't find one that I know of. Whereas like the first 3 tracks are all like classics, hits, and so. But so Superfly is a bona fide classic, which will something that we'll talk about later on for our other topics. But so I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. So thank you for those recommendations.
Oh, you know, it was like you said, I just reminded you of what you've already been introduced to, but now you see it in a different context. So, you know, that's good to know, you know, and just, you know, your perspective on it in terms of, you know, how it affected you, you know, it's good to hear. Yeah. So did that make you want to go back and check out some more of Curtis's music?
I was so stuck on the homework that that's where I stopped. But yes, I will go back and listen to more of his music. Definitely.
Yeah. Like the stuff that he did when he was with the Impressions, you know, because actually some of that stuff that he did, especially the last stuff that he did with the Impressions, as he became more aggressive in his political expressions in the music, I think you'll see how it leads up to Superfly and the albums that come after.
This is one of his later albums.
Which one, Superfly?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, he had been out there for quite some time before Superfly came up. Yeah. So he had quite a few different albums out, you know, and when the first ones, it was Jerry Butler and the Impressions. So then Jerry went as a solo act, and then that's when Curtis became the lead singer of the group. Prior to that, he was the guitarist. He was writing even then, though, you know, when it was Curtis and the Impressions. Jerry Butler. Jerry Butler.
Was he already in the group when
Who?
There? Curtis Mayfield.
Yeah. It was a quartet.
Okay.
It was Curtis, Jerry, Sam Cash, and I forget the other brother's name, you know, but yeah, it was for them. You know, it may have been even more at different times prior to that, but it settled on those 4, and then Jerry went solo, and after For Your Precious Love, he blew up. So then he went on his own, and Curtis and the group they hung on in there, you know, and Curtis was a bit he was wondering because he hadn't thought of himself as a lead singer until that point. And then of the three of them, he was the one, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess because, sometimes even back during the day, there was like sometimes a sound that was looked for in terms of lead singers. And Curtis had a unique sound, but it took him a while to grow comfortable enough with that sound to really step with it, you know. And I think that Jerry kind of imposed that on him when he left the group. It was like that. It became something he had to do. But he grew up in the church, so he knew how to express himself. You know,
Okay.
and that was, Black church is training ground for a whole bunch of vocalists in R&B, especially, but even in jazz.
You find that now in certain hip hop producers.
Mhm.
You could tell when you read an interview about them. A
Mhm.
lot of them come from the church,
Mhm.
which is like okay, and the ones that don't, you can tell. So
Yeah, there's a certain kind of spirit, literally, that folks have, from that church, because you understand that there's a higher power involved,
hmm
and it becomes an expression of prayer. So that takes you to a different vibration.
But are they also teaching music during in the church? Because I feel like anybody that comes from that type of background, they know how to play instruments.
Well, some of them learn how to play instruments in the church.
Okay.
So some churches had schools attached.
Mm.
And then some churches, if there was a musician in the choir, and usually there were,
hmm
then their children quite often would be, schooled in music, even if they didn't play the same instrument that their parent played or parents played. They would end up either singing or playing a different instrument, and they learned according to the system that was being utilized in that particular church. So yeah, and so you get a certain amount of ear training, a great deal amount of ear training, but also you would get technical studies that would adhere to the church. And some cats would solely be, and when I say cats, I should clarify that we're talking about sisters as well as brothers. So some folk, they would get a certain grounding by ear, but they might not get quote unquote formal training. Formal training means, going to a music school to simply to study music
Right.
as an entity unto itself. But those who grew up studying music in the church, it was an extension of prayer. So that the prayer became was more important than um, musical technique.
hmm
But depending on the individual and how livicated they were to pursuing music as an entity unto itself, they would study, they would practice, and then there would be times when they would hook up with musicians who are quote unquote secular. In other words, they're playing for dances and stuff like that. And a lot of times you find folks who played in the church on Saturday and Sunday, Friday and Saturday night, they're playing in the juke joint.
Right.
Sunday morning, they got to get up, put on their other suit,
Yeah.
go to church. Now they're playing for the choir. So the folks that did both, like Thelonious Monk. Thelonious Monk played in the churches. He in fact, he toured with this one sister quite extensively, and that you hear that influence in his music. That even though he has his own particular style, whatever kind of music he's playing, but you hear that in his music. Just his phrasing, is uniquely Thelonious.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's
Yeah.
what's
But Ray Charles was, oh man. You got to hear the version he does with Spirit in the Dark that he does with Aretha Franklin. It's on her it's a live album, and she comes out and does the song herself, and then Ray joins her, and then they go to a whole nother zone. But yeah, classic. Yeah.
So also to piggyback off of what we talked about last episode, I did listen to Jimmy's version of the Bob Dylan song.
Oh, All Along the Watchtower. Yeah.
Yeah, you can go ahead and get rid of that first version. We don't need that. And I listen to both.
Yeah, you did? Okay. All right. And now you know why the other guy stopped playing it, right?
Why Bob was like, all right, we can put this down.
Yeah.
I think it did a disservice by me listening to Jimmy's version first.
Oh, okay.
At first, and then somebody plays you Bob's version, you're gonna be like, so I don't even think that even if you do it reverse, you're like, hey, I like this one better. So yeah, I did listen to that. I was listening to this Bob's version. I'm like, yeah, it's not after what he did to that song. I could see why he stopped performing it.
Yeah.
Play Jimmy's version.
At that point, I don't even think anybody would ask him to play. Just leave it alone. Play your other stuff.
That's a fact.
Jimmy's got that one now.
All right. So, what did you think about the two albums that I asked you to listen to?
Unfortunately, I have to admit that I didn't get a chance to listen to them.
Oh, man, you did not do your homework.
I didn't do my homework this week. I was distracted with some other projects that I got caught up in, but I owe you one. So before the next one, I will do this homework. I'll do a makeup assignment. Of course, I do not expect to get full credit since it's coming in late, but I will do.
Okay. All right, cool. Because that leads us to one of my next.
And who were the particular artists that you
listened to? Kanye's first album,
right?
College Dropout, and Jay Electronica, A Written Testimony.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
If you had one tune of Kanye's that you would want me to listen to, what would it be?
Can't do that. Kanye got fire.
One tune.
Kanye got too much fire.
One tune. Pick one tune.
I can't narrow it down to one.
Sure you can. What does the first one on the album, is that in Slammin'?
That's a classic.
Play that one now.
What, the song? We can't play it on this because you get.
We get fined for that?
Yeah, you can't play the music on here.
Oh, okay.
And even if you do, it's got to be like less than a certain amount. I don't know the amount. You won't be able to get the song's full justice.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
all right. See, I got to learn the rules and regulations. I'm just getting up on this. This is a work in progress, audience. But we're gonna get it. On. I know sometimes people would do shorts. From they do shorts.
Yeah. You could play like I want to say like maybe 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I got to find out the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, because from time to time we want the audience, to hear, what we're referring to as well. Because it would be nice for them to hear a brief version of All Along the Watchtower so they can see the difference of why Jimmy's tune is so.
Why would you want to do that?
Well, I mean, if it's a topic, I mean, we don't have to go back and do this particular thing. I'm just saying as we move forward, there might come a time when we want to show a short excerpt of something and then, compare it to another, or just to have a short excerpt so to give the audience an insight in terms of what we're responding to.
All right. In the words of in hip hop, they say that when you lay down a track, you're basically laying down a reference, and then the real person comes in. Matter of fact, they also do this in R&B, but they have a singer lay down the reference, and then the real singer comes in and does the track. So I like to tell our audience, Bob Dylan did a reference along the Watchtower. And then they brought Jimi Hendrix.
Do the real version.
If you ever want to check those two songs out, go ahead, please do so.
You know what's funny?
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with I Heard It Through the Grapevine?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Gladys Knight released her version first. Motown released Gladys's version first.
Okay.
But Marvin's version was recorded before hers was.
Oh wow. Okay. Has that version ever come out?
Both of them came out. In fact, both of them was slamming. And Marvin's version was big up hit. But Gladys's version was a hit too. But then Marvin's really blew up. But they didn't think that his version, that the audience was ready for his version. Motown. They said, let's try something else. And then they liked the way Gladys's version, and so they released that first because they thought it had more potential. But Marvin blew up. So then once he blew up, then they said, okay, well, let's release this. And so
Gotcha.
well, he was already a big artist, but at some point, they decided that the people were ready.
Okay. All right. That's what's up. But that leads us to our next topic, something that was a bit popular this last couple of weeks. The Grammy nominations came out, and every year I notice that there are a few snubs. And so just right here doing my research, I had to go back and find out, well, did Superfly ever win a Grammy? Which it probably should have, but I just found out this is something. I mean, I don't know how true this is,
Mm-hmm.
but they said Superfly's score was ruled Oscar ineligible because Mayfield couldn't actually write music. Four Grammy noms, but he didn't win.
They said because he couldn't write it.
This situation that's going on right now, even today, where they constantly continue to move the goal line for black artists or any artist that they choose not to acknowledge, is not something new because I guess it's been happening since the 70s.
No, it's been happening longer than that, but that's
Yeah.
quite longer. And we would say in terms of the 20th century, but go ahead.
I was going to say, but then you have artists who still want a Grammy.
Who want one?
Yeah, they still want one. They still want to participate. But this is a known institution who continues to, put you in positions where, like right now, The Weeknd, who is an artist, is an R&B artist, there's reports that came out that said, well, if you don't participate and if you choose to go perform for the Super Bowl, we're not going to acknowledge you at all.
What? Say that again?
If he chooses to go participate in performing for the Super Bowl halftime performance, we're not going to give you any nominations on this end.
Who, Grammys? The Grammys said that? And what artist was this?
This is The Weeknd. He's an R&B artist, also like a pop artist.
Okay, so he had a couple of hit records.
This year, I mean, he has one of the number one songs, Blinding Lights, that was like number one across everything. And he doesn't have a Grammy nomination.
And they're saying that the reason being because of this possible performance that he will do for the NFL.
Choose them over us.
Oh, because they're the same weekend?
I don't even think it's the same weekend. But it's just, but this is
why? What's the conflict?
That's the Grammys. They always do something where it's like, we're not going to acknowledge you for whatever reason. I don't know if it's something that's going on behind the scenes, but it's constantly with these rap artists, R&B artists, and even, Curtis Mayfield, and I'm sure that list goes on, where it's like, we'll find something or find a reason to not acknowledge you. But every year, people want to go to the Grammys. They want to participate. They want a Grammy. And that's because after you win, your performance price goes up. You can charge more for this or that. But why is that important? Why do we feel the Grammys are important if they don't value our creative work?
Okay. First of all, again, let's go back a bit.
Okay.
When it comes to those type of awards, that started early in the 20th century in terms of the Oscars,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. And then at some point in time, the Nobel Peace Prize uh, began to, wait a second.
Because I was like, let me look this up. Let me
Uh-huh.
Curtis won one because I mean Superfly is a classic. And the second part of that question is like, should we continue to look for that when sometimes it's like you got artists like I don't think Tupac has won a Grammy ever, but he's cemented in history. So it's like, is it?
Wait a second, say that again now.
I said I don't think I'm gonna look it up, but I don't think Tupac has won a Grammy ever.
Okay, I doubt that, but he may have. I don't know if hip hop had become an entity unto itself, but he should have. There were a couple of albums that. But let me say this: we know that the Nobel Prizes internationally started in 1901 in terms of physics and various other topics, and eventually literature became one of the areas which the Nobel Foundation would grant prizes of acknowledgement of great achievement in a particular field. So over the years, Wole Soyinka, brother from Nigeria, was awarded a Nobel Prize for literature.
Mm.
And I don't remember the exact year, but when he won it, he was, if I'm not mistaken, the first African to receive a Nobel Prize in literature.
What's his name again?
Wole, W-O-L-E, Soyinka, S-O-Y-I-N-K-A, Wole Soyinka. So when he won it, a brother, one of his Yoruba, Wole was Yoruba, so another Yoruba came to him and said, "Oh, brother, I'm so glad that they gave you this award, that they finally recognize, that we have, an artist who's due this prize."
Mm.
And Wole said, if they had never given me this award, it's theirs. He said, you should have recognized me.
Mm.
So the clamor for whether we're talking about the Nobel Prize in Literature, the Pulitzer Prizes, the Oscars, the Grammys, any and all of these artistic awards, are generally controlled by Eurocentric peoples for Eurocentric peoples. And yet they have the audacity to say that this is a world acknowledgement, but they're not even familiar with the literature of the world. And they have no desire to become familiar with the literature of the world, because then it would just wipe out so much of their supposed superiority. The hypocrisy of their superiority would be exposed, for the lie that it is. Notice I said lie, not myth.
Right.
All right. It's a lie. Many people will say, oh, the myth of white superiority. No, a myth is a figurative explanation of natural phenomena. It's not meant to be taken literal, but it does provide in-depth understanding, overstanding, understanding of that force. So you get a perspective. It takes you deeper into it, but it's not a literal. It's not like when it talks about when you have creation stories. These stories provide insight into the process of creation, but it's not meant to be taken literally, as some people with certain scriptures tried to claim that this is the word of God.
Right.
In traditional African societies, we didn't develop those kind of scriptures. We provided scriptures that provided insight into natural phenomena and our relationship to those various forces that we interact with. So when these people, you know, this thing about white superiority is not a myth. It's not providing insight to anything. It's a lie. They are not, have never been superior to anybody. In fact, their inferiority complex is what causes them to want to downpress others, plant themselves on top. And the only thing that allows them to do that are the weapons of destruction, weapons of mass destruction that they terrorize the rest of the planet with. That's what they use. So they give out their awards and they pat each other on the back, you know, after they've wiped out so many libraries, destroyed schools and institutions, you know, around the planet that other indigenous people had, whether they be scriptures that were written or oral scriptures. In fact, Europeans tried, when they say literacy, that oral literacy is oxymoron. In other words, an obvious contradiction. But for us, the spoken word has its own written aspect that you would be able to infuse in that word an under understanding of a phenomena or of a historical event, such that it is repeated over and over and over and over and over again. It may be embellished, but the principles of that presentation are consistent. And the consistency is what allows us to say that this is oral literature. Yes, there may be slight details that vary depending on who's telling it and the circumstances with which, you know, the information is shared, but the consistency of that is such that this is the story. So we look at this as literature. And without a doubt, we as African people have the oldest literal tradition on the planet. And it couldn't be any other way, because for the most of the time that human beings have been on the planet, there was only us. Right. But we also have the oldest literal tradition, where we actually put pen to paper. In fact, the word paper comes from papyri, which is a grass that grows along the Hopi River, which is now known as the Nile. So we were the first ones to put pen to paper, but our first writings were not on paper. We literally painted on rocks. We painted on trees. We wrote on everything that was stationary. Mm-hmm. And we began with symbolic script to signify, with pictorial script, what they call, sometimes they try to say hieroglyphics, you know, in terms of pictorial script. But the thing of it is the codification of the figures in metanetra, which is what the Greeks called hieroglyphics, are such that we would call it divine script, because it's reached a hierarchy of information transmission that just reading it takes you into another zone when you're reading the symbols, you know. And we use these symbols to connect us consistently with other aspects of nature. But we also have the earliest forms of demotic and meroitic script, which are symbolic, you know, where you have, you know, phonetic connections. In fact, the phonetics, the Phoenicians, they had a type of demotic script, which they inherited from people in Kemet. The Phoenicians were ship builders and seafarers, but they were my point is that in terms of literary script, oral, we have the oldest oral tradition. We also have the oldest literary tradition. So it's, I mean, the fact that Wole Soyinka, you know, was worthy of a great award, acknowledgement of, you know, the level of creativity in his writing, It's not, I mean, yo, man, we got so many different writers, it ain't even funny. The reasons other people didn't get it was because there was a deliberate downpression of African cultural expressions, when it comes to literature, written script. That's been the case, because it's just like when they say the World Series. Are they playing the world?
Right, they're not playing.
They're not playing the world. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that's the American series. They never.
Yeah. Look at the NFL. Which I don't watch anymore. Colin, since the fiasco with Colin Kaepernick.
Mm-hmm.
But we look at that, when they talk about the Super Bowl, the Super Bowl. And it's like, okay, the Super Bowl, World Championship. Well, nobody else plays this type of football.
Right.
But now the American women, they could claim being world champions when it comes to the soccer. That's what the world calls football, because they play with their feet. Right. The only one who's allowed to put their hands on are the goaltenders.
Right.
Everybody else, they're really playing football.
Mm-hmm.
But the American men, please, no, they're not even close. And yet, in this country, who gets paid more money?
The men.
Yep.
They just had a clip where it was talking about how much. I want to say it was LeBron, but it might have been someone else, another basketball player, and how much he gets paid monthly, as opposed to a WNBA star gets paid for her entire contract. And it's like, it don't even add up.
And it was so disgraceful that if you go back in the history, a lot of the sisters who were playing in the WBA were usually doing double time. So they were playing in Europe or other places around the world, China, in order to earn a living during the off season.
Right.
And they would sign contracts that would allow them to come back here, but they were actually earning more money overseas than they were over here.
Mm-hmm.
But that patriarchal, BS that was dominating here, didn't allow them to compensate these sisters in a way that even made sense, so that they could be like, because some sisters were catching flack because they were coming like late, like they might miss the training part of the season,
mm-hmm.
and then they come in. But the basketball that they was playing overseas, not only was it paying more, but they weren't slouching.
Right.
The women over on the seas, because they were professionals, so their game wasn't that far different from the U.S. So, but U.S. has this reputation, So, in fact, oh man, I just saw this program. This sister, she was on this program, and she came back. She was a rookie at 34, because that was a year that the WBA
started.
Yeah, and so she her team won the first 4 championships.
They already been playing for so many years. This was their
because she had been playing overseas,
mm-hmm.
And she was fluent in, I think, Italian, because she was living in Italy, and she was playing on there, and she was rocking it over there, And then when they started the league over here, she came over. She won 4 championships with the team that she was with, and then she retired, and she was the first sister selected to the Hall of Fame for playing basketball on a professional level.
Okay. She must have played on, was that Cynthia Cooper?
Yes.
Cynthia Cooper.
Yeah.
Because she was old when she came over.
Well, she was 34, older for a rookie.
For a rookie, that's what I'm
saying. Yeah. At 34, please.
She's still young, but it's like if she would have came in when she was 24, you know what I mean?
Or 19, like some of these kids, coming right after their first year in college. But the women, more often than not, who go to college, well, most of them, most of them graduate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they because I think the rules are a little bit different, but amongst the men, they be going right to the league.
Mm-hmm.
If they think they can, they definitely will. So but getting back to our original topic. So Wale said, yeah, you should have recognized me. And the thing of what he was saying basically was that we have to learn how to recognize each other.
So let me ask you something. All right. So a couple years ago, so the night before the Grammys, they actually give out awards that don't go on TV. They're almost like,
There's a bunch of, most of the awards are given off stage. Yes.
Right. And that's, all right. So just a little tidbit. That's one of the reasons why Will Smith, who won the first hip hop Grammy, they boycotted because they wasn't going to show the hip hop Grammy on TV.
Right.
He boycotted. A couple years ago, they give Jay-Z like this, like long-lasting Grammy.
Life Achievement.
Life Achievement. There you go. Thank you. Life Achievement Award. Here you go. Come back tomorrow. We're going to have the Grammys live on TV. He's nominated for 8 Grammys. They give him front row seat, everything. Him, Beyonce, they give him the front row. They sitting there all night. They don't give him one. And now this new situation happens, with this year, and then you hear the outcry, and it's like, well, we need to support our own. We need to support like the Soul Train Awards and the BET Awards.
Yeah. Well, the Soul Train more than the BET, but that's another subject.
Right. That will happen. That next year, everybody's gonna go to the Soul Train Awards. But then when the Grammys come calling,
oh yeah, they'll run because they need Master's pat on the head. That's the problem. We've been infected with that disease that we need their approval to justify our qualifications in any particular subject area.
What you're saying is they're already getting the qualification from the fans. We're already telling, we're going out to buy the music. We're streaming the music. We're letting you know we like your music. I know it leads to a bigger check, but why do you need that?
It doesn't always lead to a bigger checkbook.
That's true too.
But we're not satisfied because, see, we've been bitten or infected with this virus that says that we must be equal to them. And we don't really stop and think about what that means. Why would we want to be equal to these people? What have they done that would have us to the point where we would want to be equal to them?
Not equal to them, but do you ever think that it's more so you want something you can't have?
Yes. That's been held from you and told that if you don't have this, something's wrong with you. If you don't want this, something's wrong with you. Yes. And that's problematic. We've been infected with that virus, and we need to develop a vaccine from it. So it has to do also, for me, it's not only awards, it's holidays.
Mm.
And over a period of time, that's why I began to realize that it was important for me to celebrate African holidays, because we had holidays, holy days, celebration days, weeks, months. We had that for time immemorial. In fact, Kwanzaa is a New Jack representation of harvest festivals that have been celebrated longer in Africa than any place on the planet, because we were dealing with agriculture first. The first people to domesticate grain were Africans. And specifically, it is said that African women were the first domesticators of grain. Men were primarily involved in hunting. All of us were involved in gathering and in terms of fishing, So fishing is a type of hunting. So hunting and gatherers. So those are the primary sources of food sources. And because of their particular nature, it was women who were more observant in terms of the process of that would be necessary for us to take the seeds that we had after we'd eaten certain things and plant it deliberately, not just wait for something to happenstance occur, but to participate in the process, and whereby we would prepare the land, plant seeds, nurture those seeds, and then have a stable food source. So with the domestication of grain by the African women who showed the men how to prepare the land and the process of planting and all of that, once we have a stable food source, then we have the foundation of urban development and other sciences such as astronomy, mathematics, writing. These other things come out of that because now we got a stable food source. We don't have to be moving around, because if you're dealing with hunting and gathering, you're on the move all the time. So because you're not as stationary, yes, we develop the first, pictured, stories, like basically, which comics are still, a part of that tradition. That's the first type of literature. So people drawing, this is what we did. There were cows, folks. You see pictures of folks hunting, all of that kind of stuff. But once you get a stable food source where you don't have to be moving around all the time, then you can begin to meditate and develop on those theoretical ideas. You got time to contemplate and, figure things out on a different level. So now that we're, have a stable food source, now we're not just carrying our tents with us, we're building homes. All types of homes, in all types of structures. So architecture becomes, developed. Then as when we have these harvest festivals, we have time now to even more observe the other aspects of nature, specifically the stars and the movements and the relationships of the cycles of those movements, to the point where we develop calendars. The first of which were lunar calendars, and then solar calendars. So that's the way that it moved chronologically. When we study the oldest calendars, they're lunar, but then secondary, the solar calendars, and then the solar calendars become predominant. And then after that, then we can begin to project what's gonna happen based on what has happened, because we've observed these things for so long, and we developed certain things. So we know that at this point in time, it's obvious that we are much older than what is commonly taught in the miseducational institutions that dominate the planet at this now, historical. So, when they talk about Kemet starting in 3200 BC, before BCE, before the Common Era. And so then they backed it up a little bit. They said, well, 4000 BCE, but it's obviously older. For instance, and one of the things that we know, a marker, is the Sphinx. So the Sphinx, where you have the head of a human being and the body of a lion. Mm-hmm. So they're able to date that by not only the structure, but looking at the grooves in the structure that were caused due to rain. And they know that first of all, they know that the head was much older than the body of the Sphinx. The head came first. And that head is similar to the heads that you will find in Central America, the Olmecs. Okay. Had these huge stone heads, that was a common thing, in African societies. So do you have these huge stone heads? But the Sphinx is unique because you don't see the Sphinx everywhere.
Right.
Why? Because lions ain't everywhere. Lions are unique to Africa. You have other kind of cats, but lion, only Africa. So now you have this body of the lion that comes later. And so what it signifies is our ability to control our animal physique, that the mind controls the body. That's one of the meanings of the Sphinx. That's one of the things that it stands for. This controlling this. So with that, the grooves in the body of the Sphinx indicate that the whole statue was finished at a time where that area where the Sphinx is now, there were a lot of rain. They were getting a lot of rain, which means that had to be much, much older, because it took like what, a 1,000 years or more for that area to become desert. So 5,000 BC, it had to be much older than that. Much older. At a time, in order, because the Sahara at one time, all of that was savanna, wasn't it? It became a desert, and in fact, that led to migrations from that area into other parts of Africa and the planet. Because you got to remember that where the Sahara is in terms of North Africa, it was like that at a certain time you could actually walk into what is now Europe by crossing that wadi. It's a body of water now, but at one point it was you could walk from Africa to Europe through that part that goes right into Spain, where the Rock of Gibraltar is. All of that whole thing was landfill. It was land, and it became flooded. There was a great flood, and because of that flood, then the Mediterranean is connected by water to what is now known as the Atlantic Ocean. And even the Mediterranean had different names depending on who was controlling it. So we have that kind of situation, which lets us know that the chronology has to be reconfigured to more accurately describe how old we are. But as the technology increases in its ability to be utilized in an endeavor to accurately mark the dates of certain architectural things and bones, when they find, and because there's enough information in the bones that even after thousands and thousands of years, it can determine how old that person was by stuff that's in the bones as well as stuff that's around the bones, because then you date different soil compositions, and is there wood next to the person? Well, then that can be dated. Then you have a variety of other measurements that you can utilize to get an accurate assessment of how old that person was when they walked this planet. But as the science of these kind of studies, gets more precise, we get older and older and older and older and older and older. In terms of now they're saying Homo sapiens sapien, modern man. Generally speaking, people say between 160 and 200,000 years, but now it's saying probably closer to 250 to 300,000 years that modern man has been on the planet. But the nobles, getting back to them, what do? They gunpowder. They make gunpowder. They make weapons. And they sell them to everybody. Nobles is in business, they sell weapons, and they help,
Y'all fight. There's money to be made here.
Yeah. But they're also fighting for the minds of the planet. Because they know that if you control this can be controlled. So these people, who are giving out these awards, they have the money to do so because they've been involved in the slaughter of untold billions of people. And then they turn it around and they give the Nobel Peace Prize.
Mm.
They give prizes for physics and astronomy and agriculture and literature. Yeah. So Wale gets an award, but make no mistake about it, the intellectual war is a part of controlling other cultural apparatuses. So music, poetry, storytelling, dance, art, when we talk about visual arts, these are all tools to transmit information. So when you control the definition of the usage and the superiority or the quality of art, you're also controlling the minds in saying that this is how we think. This is why this tool is why and how this tool is used. They define it. So we've been, defined as being inferior to these psychologically psychopathic people who only claim dominance by their ability to mass murder human beings. So that is what gives their particular music, when they say classical music, we think about European music, know. But I remember I was in Jamaica and on this beach, and I'm playing my flute, bamboo flute, and I just, playing. So when I finish, this European woman, she's on a little raft on the water, and she says, "Oh, that was nice. Ah, wow, I play music too." I said, "Yeah, what kind of music?" She says, "Oh, classical music." I said, "What kind of music?" She said, "Classical." I said, "What kind of music do you play?" "Oh, Bach and Brahms." And, I said, "Oh, you play European classical music." But we are taught that when that word comes up, we're only supposed to think of one, but as I said, and say over and over again, if James Brown ain't classical, there ain't no such being. If Aretha Franklin ain't classical, John Coltrane, Betty Carter, Sarah Vaughan, Dizzy Gillespie, Mongo Santa Maria, Celia Cruz, and so many others. And we have to acknowledge ourselves, and we have to make it, and then, so when people, when I'm talking with folks and they start talking about what days they're going to celebrate, I don't celebrate with people who have murdered so many people in my family. I'm supposed to celebrate with them?
Right.
They got a lot of blood. They're celebrating their victories over us, whether it be mental victories, whether it be actually warfare. Because Thanksgiving, look, the people that helped them survive the winter. Do you know that they were eating some of the indigenous folks that they killed? They were eating them. They were even eating each other. Cannibalism was real. Them people in the Plymouth, and all of that stuff. And if them folks hadn't taught them how to grow some corn and where to fish and some other crops, they'd have been done.
Each other.
They were cannibalism. But that goes back, like in the caves in Europe, they find bones, and with teeth marks. So they know that them people were getting ate. And usually the people who were getting ate were elderly women and children. They don't talk about that part of their history a whole lot. But they were living in caves. When we went into the caves, we were usually mining. We were not living in caves because there was no need to live in caves in Africa. We had good weather. live out on the turf.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Cannibalism? What you got? Cannibal? You got plenty of fruit and vegetables. Got animals. Catch that animal over there.
Right.
Run down that gazelle, and literally, we would run down the gazelle. You know why?
Right.
You know how? I should say, you know how.
I was about to say, how you gonna do that?
We were long distance runners. The gazelle is faster in short distances, but we just keep on coming and keep on coming. And when that gazelle get tired, dinner.
That's sick.
It's what is real.
Oh, I know.
So when you talk about these, like, while Africans are dominating the marathon, before there was such a thing as Greece, where they talk about this guy running a marathon. No. That's what y'all call it. But we've been doing that for a long time.
Right.
Run down that rabbit.
That's crazy.
Rabbit get tired after a while, unless it got a hole to go into. But the gazelles and stuff like that, run them down.
All right, let's switch up. Staying on music, but I wanted to bring up another topic to you. And you just mentioned some names as well. So I'm going to mention just a few names, not a lot. Scott LaRock, Stretch, Tupac, Biggie, Big L, Freaky Ty, Jam Master Jay, Soulja Slim, Mac Dre, Chinks, Drugs, XXX Tentacion, Nipsey Hussle, Pop Smoke, King Von, who's probably the most recent. And just recently, there was another artist coming out of a Walmart who was shot. Are rap artists targeted because of the communities that they come from, or because of the music that they make? Now, one of the theories is that, we deal with, when I say the communities that we come from, a lot of us come from, I wouldn't say impoverished neighborhoods, but, these rap artists, they make it. They believe in coming back to the hood to inspire the youth and others that you too can make it as well. But when you come back to the hood, you come back in a fancy car. You come back in jewelry. And the people that live in that community want to take it from you.
I think that we need to understand that a substantial number of those folks who are involved in hip hop were not, quote unquote, ghetto kids. These are youth who are inspired by that genre of artistic expression now known as hip hop. And they want to participate in that process. And then they want to emulate the quote unquote gangster lifestyle because they've been encouraged to do so in order to have what they call cred, which allows their product to be more desirable, because that is one particular aspect of that music which has become popular.
Why doesn't this happen in other genres of music?
Pardon me?
Why doesn't this happen in other genres of music?
Because the when you're dealing with toxic substances and other quote unquote criminal behavior, then folks want to flex as if they're gangsters, so they want to project a particular lifestyle that some of them are not prepared to actually deal with because they didn't really grow up like that.
Right.
All of them didn't grow up in the quote unquote ghetto. In fact, a substantial number of African people are working. In fact, the overwhelming majority of us are working class people.
Right.
So they ain't in quote unquote the ghetto.
Right.
And even what the ghetto meant, everybody wouldn't run down the street shooting. You know, that has something that has grown, you know, in terms of, you know, the amount of violence, you know, because of access to weapons that previously black folks didn't have, because the last thing anybody wanted to do was to sell a gun to a black person unless they knew that they were going hunting. But for the most part, and that was, we're talking about after World War II and even, you know, before and after the war between the states, you know, you have black folks first. That's, you know, actually during the war between the states, you have a substantial number of Africans who are trained, you know, but even preceding the war between the states, I had to catch myself because there's no such thing as a civil war. Once people get to that level of behavior, there's nothing civil about war.
Right.
That's an oxymoron. You know, when you're shooting and stabbing and clubbing and dropping bombs and gas and all, that's nothing civil about that. Right. So anyway.
But the kids that listen to punk rock, they're using drugs too.
Yeah, but they that's not, you know, hyped up. They're not encouraged for the gangster kind of stuff. Even though, remember, you can look at it. That's something that, you know, Europeans have been doing. All you got to do, and they glamorized it. You know, like the what's the Untouchables. Mm-hmm. You know, they glamorized that, but who always came up on top? Elliot Ness, FBI. That ain't the way it really runs, you know, because most of the time when it came to the FBI, they spent more time, you know, fighting us as African people, starting with Marcus Garvey, you know, and other African nationalists who were about developing independence, you know, of within the African community, you know, independence movements. They spent more time doing that and developing programs like COINTELPRO, which, you know, was about spying on, again, the Black Panther Party, Nation of Islam, and other organizations, you know, that there were us and other organizations that were involved in the liberation militarily and politically and educationally and culturally of African people. They felt that was the greatest threat in America. Now, Ku Klux Klan and these militia boys, these, you know, all of that, they wasn't worried about that because they was that. They are that. So these a lot of these kids in the hip hop thing got caught up, and they did come in contact with some very nefarious people. And it is often said that the only thing more crooked than the boxing industry is the music industry, in terms of the amount of exploitation that goes on and just the thuggerish, you know, behaviors to exploit artists, the artists, keep them under control the flow of product. But that has developed over a period of time, and you know, at different stages, you know, between the people who were, you know, investing in and exploiting these artists, you know, that would determine the degree to which, you know, they could be exploited. Like, and I just give you for an example, they say, I read somewhere with Jackie Wilson, you know, this company wanted him to re-sign with them, and he was thinking about going with another company, and they hung him out a window until he signed, you know. Yeah. So these kind of things, you know, these are the kind of people they were dealing with. So, you know, and drugs were used to control these artists. You know, Charlie Parker was just one example. Billie Holiday was just another example. But, you know, there were a lot of artists who were controlled through substances, toxic substances. And
on around me, how do we address the people that are coming at them?
well, first we have to address our artists, not only the people who are coming at them, but we have to re-educate, reclaim our consciousness as a people.
I'll say that because a lot of times you hear the music and it's, you know, it's glorifying shit
Yeah.
each other. You know?
Unlike the soundtrack to Superfly,
Right.
which is warning about the dangers. Unlike What's Going On, Marvin Gaye.
Right.
But how does he die?
His father shoots him.
Why? What was Marvin doing?
I believe I've heard that he was living in a way that his father didn't approve.
But what in particularly? What? He was strung out on cocaine.
Mm.
And he had an adversarial relationship with his dad. And it exploded, you know.
Mm.
Yeah. But, you know, drugs have been involved in a lot of different lives, you know, in the Temptations. More than one of those brothers who was involved in that got caught up in toxic substances, whether it be alcohol, because a lot of people forget alcohol is a drug.
Right.
It always bugs me out when people say drugs and alcohol. No, alcohol is a drug.
Yeah.
You know. And quiet as kept, sugar is a drug.
That's a fact.
You know. It preceded cocaine in popularity and in destruction, hooking people up, man. You know, so these things are, and in fact,
so I'll say this though, what you mentioned as far as like the songs, like What's Going On. In some way, do you believe that hip hop is doing that as well? Because some of that, not they glorifying it or not, they're also telling you about what's going on in the street and what could happen too.
Yeah, and positively. I mean, you know, look, don't push me cause I'm close to the edge. I'm trying not to lose my head. Ha 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 ha. It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under.
Right.
That's hit that. They were one of the earliest, quote unquote, that blew up group that you know, the Sugar Hill Gang blew up.
Right.
And they blew up hip hop.
Right.
As a style. All right. But they were not the first rap artists.
Right.
You know, but they blew up in a way that had not previously happened. You know, Oscar Brown Jr. and Rudy Ray Moore, you know, preceded them. They were dealing, you know, with that, you know, genre, you know, but they didn't blow up to the same degree. You know, and so as a genre, you know, it became very popular at a time when the youth were unfortunately not being exposed to instrumental development. So a lot of the music programs in the schools were discontinued. You know, but people like Nat King Cole, Jimmy Griffin, you know, and so many others. Yusef Lateef, Barry Harris, you know, all of these cats studied music in school in Detroit and Chicago, man. You know, they had Captain Diet in DuSable High School was churning out a whole bunch of musicians.
Mm.
There were music programs developed in these black high schools. You know, Duke Ellington, you know, where he goes to the school in Washington, D.C., he wasn't the only one, but by the time he graduated from high school, he was ready to be a professional.
Mm.
So you had, I mean, you know, a lot of cats didn't, when it came to music, they didn't need to go to college because they went to college on a high school level. And the quality that they were prepared to deal with, They were prepared. If they had wanted to go to college, they could have. But a lot of cats, was like, oh, just like today, a lot of kids go right into the NBA because they got to get some money. They need that money. They want it. And why sit around here and go to play in college, and not get paid? If I'm gonna put my body on the line, I might as well get paid. Right. For musicians, the same thing. Why go to school and study something that I'm already know I can go on the road with this? So what was happening was those programs were being dismantled. And so now, however, what they could not dismantle was the level of creativity that existed in the African community.
Right.
So that's where they went. That's the direction they went, because the creativity was going to happen. And it blew up. So you got the folks that I'm familiar with, because I'm not as familiar as you are, with that, because I just didn't pursue it. Most of my studies, as I've come, were in the folklore and in blues and studying jazz. Mm-hmm. So what I know of are folks like Dead Prez, who I recorded with,
right?
Arrested Development, who I recorded with. And Arrested Development,
not that I want them to, but those type of artists aren't getting gunned down.
Right. Exactly. But they're not getting the support either. So they didn't blow up. Right. Arrested Development had that one hit, bam. Mm-hmm. And next thing you know, why? The people involved were still creative, but they didn't get no, that's not a genre. By then, what was happening was the corporate structure moved in. Whereas previously, folks were recording their own tapes, mixing their own tapes. They were selling cassettes out of the trunks of their cars.
Right.
They go to a party, they perform, they got a whole bunch of cassettes, they sell them. Some of these cats were doing gold records and platinum records out of their cars.
Right, right.
And that's why you had, over a period of time, some of the folks became popular in areas outside of their local area, only because they had relatives that came and visited and got some of these tapes and then went back to wherever they went. But the East Coast, and specifically in New York, that was the seed, mm-hmm. that particular area. And then, as it spread out, folks start going back. Then they began to develop their own regional expressions when they're doing the same thing. They're taping their stuff. They're going into the studios. They're making their studios in their garages, in their apartments. They're not dependent on somebody giving them a record deal. They're making their own way.
Right.
What happens is the music industry gets involved and they start handing out these contracts. Now the goal becomes to get a contract as opposed to self-development. And as such, the industry takes over an industry. We had our own industry. It was at its, at its infancy. It's stillborn because the folks outside of it say, oh, and not only do they give out contracts, but now that they're giving contracts for how much time you spend in the studio and now they're saying, when folks come out with something like Arrested Development came out, they say, okay, that's cool, but we want some of that hardcore stuff, that nigga stuff.
Yeah.
So that's what they got. Now, the thing of it is, if you listen to the messages in the music during the 60s, the popular music, and you listen to the music that our children are listening to, and not only children, but the wide range. I mean, I know people in my age group who are more familiar with hip hop than you are probably, because they went in that direction, whereas I went into a different direction. But, the music went into that direction because the people who own the recording company said, look, we want you to do this. And if you want this contract, we want that. We don't want that Arrested Development stuff. We want that gangster stuff. So that influence, just like, like now, some politicians were bought, some politicians were not. But then at a certain point, they opened up the floodgates when they said, okay, anybody can develop, can invest as much money as they want into these politicians as they want. There are no restrictions anymore. Now, the corporate industry controls a disproportionate amount of these tricksters because they're able to put money in their pocket during the campaigns to give them, and so their campaigns flood the community. They become more popular and they get voted in behind popularity, not because their program is more in the interest of the development of the community. So the same thing happens with the music. After a while, the gangster stuff is just everything that these kids hear. And we hear, so that becomes the thing. And again, some of these folks are assassinated because they want to become independent. Tupac. You mentioned one, Nipsey Hussle. These are folks that want to control their product. These are folks that realize the influence that their music is having on the community, and they want to redirect that so that the influence becomes more positive. Mm-hmm. So did the guy who pulled the trigger on Nipsey, was he an assassin, or was he just a happenstance because of the environment that was created that made him jealous of what Nipsey represented?
Right.
Or both. They have yet to find out who actually pulled the trigger on Tupac or Biggie. They ain't found neither one of them. But the question is, why then? So then those two in particular, but others, why? Because 9 times out of 10, they're living a lifestyle that puts them in the forefront. And like I said, some of them in the forefront of a lifestyle that they were not prepared for.
So let me say this, right? So this artist I listen to, his name is Benny the Butcher. He is in Texas. He goes to Walmart and he goes shopping, grabs some stuff. He goes back to the parking lot. They roll up on him. And they ask him, we need the jewelry. He's not, just the story is, he's not taking off the jewelry fast enough, so they shoot him in the leg. They don't kill him, but they shoot him in the leg. So is that, like, what is that? And then a situation happened in Texas where one artist, he was one of the, he was like an underground rapper. He dies. But the guy he signed under, Bootsy, goes down there to, see what's going on. They shoot his van up. So it's like,
this is the level of self-hatred that's been infused in us behind the society that we're trapped in. Yeah, this is fratricide. Fraternity is a group of folks that look out for each other. Fratricide is like when that group turns and implodes. Just like suicide, I kill myself. Fratricide, we kill ourselves. But again, we got to understand this. Most white people who get murdered by white people.
That's a fact. No, not denying.
Let's be clear about that.
Yeah.
And it's real.
Right.
Cops kill white people too. And the majority of cops that are murdered by white folks. They got access to more weapons.
Right.
And they got more braggadocio, when it comes to interacting with, because they grow up with these same people. They grow up with these folks that we don't see except when they come in our neighborhood with a gun on their hip.
Right.
But the folks, that robbing banks and stuff like that, they know these cats. And they can tell by looking at them, oh, this punk, pow. Mm-hmm. They don't, that's not, whereas with us, we've been inundated with this be peaceful with the thing. And even those amongst us who are not peaceful tend to be more intimidated by these other folks than the average criminal might be. if they don't. I'll put it this way: the criminals that are trained martially,
Mm-hmm.
they flex harder. So, but most of these shootings take place with people on the spur of the moment by people who, like I get, they're infused with this thing of feeling inefficient, deficient because they don't own that chain. You got a chain that got you got a you can got that chain. I know if I steal from you, it's gonna be easier for me to rip you off than to go to that jewelry store that's got that security system set up, and I'll be exposed because just being in the area to go in that jewelry store, I'm suspect.
Mm-hmm.
But you, I can take your stuff because I know 5-0 ain't gonna do jack about it.
Mm.
So there's a whole body of information that we need to take under consideration when we talk about these kind of incidences that happen. But make no mistake about it, how many times is some innocent bystander, some innocent bystander has gotten shot because somebody was shooting at somebody else?
Well, that's what goes on in Chicago, where
Yeah,
constantly the little kids are getting shot.
because the chumps with the weapons ain't got no training. They're not trained.
Mm.
They're just misfits with a lot of internal anger, and it ends up imploding for a variety of reasons.
I know it's easy to say, because of the lack of programs in the city, but if there was something that you could think of, not just one thing, even if it's a couple, if there's a couple things that you could think of that might, because violence is going to happen, but is there a way for us to have it less often? I'm not just saying to the artists, but to each other, because we killing each other too.
Yeah.
But
so the thing that we need first and foremost,
we had after school programs when I was growing up, and they were still killing each other. So
was it the people who were attending the after school programs, or was it folks who were not attending who were actually more imploding? I'm not saying that the people in the after school programs never had any confrontations,
right.
with each other, but percentage wise,
right, the kids that are not involved in these different type of activities, yes.
Also, let's look at the influence of television. The overwhelming majority of these programs are not controlled by us.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And the kind of images that they project of us and glorify so that people be thinking that this is the way to be.
Right.
Even if you come from a working class family, you're still supposed to flex like this. And a lot of these kids, we're encouraged to be functionally illiterate. Because if you are quote unquote intelligent, you're acting white.
Yeah.
So there's that
trying to be smart
there. And it's like, yo, man, no. So, but the images are so flooded the community such that, we assume that somebody who graduates from Howard University or Temple University with a PhD in Africana studies, or Syracuse or Harvard or Yale and all of that kind of stuff, we assume that those are the rare ones. There's a whole bunch of people. Harvard ain't all of that. Yale ain't all of that. The thing of it is having the opportunity and having the foundation so that when you, come in contact with the information, you're not intimidated. But I'm seeing now a situation where again, we're going this pandemic that we're involved in, the greatest damage that I'm looking at now is with our children. Because too many of us are not prepared to provide an African-centered curriculum for our children, which we desperately need. that will rectify all the other stuff. I remember a friend of mine who was a member of the Black Panthers, and he said when he was about 15, 16 years old, he goes to join the Black Panthers. And he says when he went there, he said the first thing he asked him, he said, "Look, give me a gun so I can kill me a cracker." You know, he was angry. You know, because he had seen enough things and he was looking at the way these gangbangers with uniforms and badges, how they were, terrorizing the community, and he was looking at this and that and so many other, and he wanted to do something about it. And he said, "Just give me a gun so I can kill one of these crackers." And they gave him a book. He said, "I don't want no book. Give me a gun." He said, "The book will teach you how to use the gun. Develop this weapon first." They understood it. And one of the things that one of the books that I would suggest, if people want to understand the process of colonialism and how that works, there's a small book. It's about 100 pages long. And it's called The Prince. It was written by an Italian called Machiavelli.
Okay.
He wrote it. And he was trying to get back in good stead with the prince he had worked for. And he wrote this discourse because he assumed that if he could provide this manual to this prince, the prince would realize that this is the kind of guy he needed in his court to work with him. So that's why he wrote it. And he wrote several other books. But The Prince, if you want to understand colonialism, how it works, various strategies of invading another people and to take over there, and the process through which you gangster militarily, and then you step back and you set it up so the point that they control themselves for you in your interest, and so you can exploit those resources, human and material. That book will clarify why they do, what their purpose is. And then you see that this is not accident. And when we study, their history, what we realize is that what they did or what they are doing to us, they did to themselves. They started out doing that to each other. And then at a certain point, they flipped the script and said, they still fought each other, but they generally, now you find that they flipped the script to the point where it allows Europe to gangster the rest of the planet economically. Disproportionately, they have access to the material resources and the human resources of the planet for their exploitation purposes. So when we get back to those awards, when we reclaim the African mind, we won't need a pat on the head from them. We'll be able to recognize the artists in our community that not only are creative, but are utilizing their creativity in our group interest. Because that will be a very important component to determine who will be saluted and who will not. Are you committed to working with us?
Right.
Working for us, with us? Are you recognizing that you come from us and that your individual paycheck is not done at the expense of us? You get paid while we continue to suffer?
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that that's why, going back to, some of the self-hate, when an artist attempts to evolve and starts to make music for the community, and then we pull back from him.
Because we're taught to do that.
Enjoyed when he was in the club, when he was shooting at people.
He was a hero. Say that again. Who's the name?
No. It could be one example, two examples. Nas and Jay-Z. Like now, some of their music is more towards a conscious, type of thinking. It's not so much of what they did before. And Nas has always gone in and out, but
well, you got to remember who his dad was.
Right. But when he's trying to educate you, nobody want to hear all that.
Right.
When he's telling the girl to do this and do that, or
ready for that,
riding in the car.
Yeah, man, that's one of our God, the blues. Yeah.
And that goes back to people like Mos Def and like you said, Dead Prez. It's like they don't get the praise that they should.
Exactly. Because the folks, and I give you a reason why. So this Negro owned BET.
Mm-hmm.
But he was more concerned with being a billionaire than owning BET.
Right.
And even as BET, it wasn't, even though this Negro owned it, and Negro in Spanish is black. So we could say this black dude, he owned it, but he was not black. He was more interested in being a billionaire than understanding the influence that he could have developed and would have had on the African community and the rest of the planet as such. That platform, BET, was much more powerful than any other platform that he got.
Right.
That platform could have allowed him to take off into the rest, but he was looking at that as a stepping stone to become a billionaire as opposed to being an influencer of a billion people.
Mm.
And that's why BET never became what it could have become on that level. Had he been, there was a wide variety of artists that he could have made all of that, but his vision. And unfortunately, a lot of us can't see it, don't want to see it. And you say invest in black people? We're encouraged not to want to do the work. We want to get it on cheap. I want to get rich. That's all. I want to get rich. I don't want to help us get rich.
Right.
Or if we do, that's just a side thing. That's a sidebar. That ain't the goal.
So all right. So piggyback off of that, I use this is not a paid sponsor, but I use Tidal, which is owned by Jay-Z. Now I have some mixed feelings about this. Mm-hmm. This is his company. He's a black man. I don't pay for anybody else's music subscription because I'd rather give it to as much as I can, give it to a black company. Try to recycle our money because our dollar gets out of here in 5 minutes, if that. It doesn't stay within the community. Number one, people people do not support that streaming site because they say Jay-Z got enough money. But number two, as a person who pays for it, it didn't make me feel good when they take a company picture and there's not that many black faces, if at all, besides him.
Wow.
So how much of it is a black company?
Interesting question, indeed.
You running this, put some of these, because if we the culture, we know what's hot and what's not, why you not hiring these kids fresh out of college to come in there and run that company? Now, granted, he did hire one guy's name is Elliot Wilson, who's a black man. He's like creative director of it. So that's good. But I'm talking about when he took that company picture, that looked different in the light. That did not make me feel good at all.
It was like, I might as well spend my money with these white folks.
And I'm not saying that you got to have an entire black staff. That's not what I'm saying. But for you to be
Dominantly.
right, for you to be the only black face I see, you and your wife, everybody else surrounding you, I don't see it ain't no sisters in the picture, ain't no brothers in the picture at all. What kind of company is that? So I wonder why that continues to happen, because now it's like, we give black companies a hard time when it's like we don't want to turn over our money to them. You'll give your money to Walmart. And I mean, they known for not giving. It's not quality products. Everything in there, they can get it at a bulk price. It's just cheaper. But to spend an extra couple dollars with a company, like you said, that looks like you, that's difficult.
Yeah.
I ain't giving them money. They don't need my money. Walmart don't need your money either. Crazy. Let's go to our third subject, because this has been a long episode. Yeah. Do you want I know I've been killing you with the hip hop, but come on. Do you want a hip hop scenario, or do you want to talk about what they might do with the vaccinations for COVID?
Wow.
Or you want to leave that for the next episode?
Yeah, let's leave the vaccinations. But I as a prelude to that, I will go back to the importance of education. Education should lead you to you, so that you have a deeper and more profound understanding of who you are, because you understand where you come from. And then that will provide the enlightenment you need to understand where you are, and then enable us to plan for the future, enable you to plan for the future. So I have to include myself in that, because I am because we are, and you are because we are. So education should lead me to me, so that I have a deeper understanding of who I am. I know where I come from. I got an idea where I'm at, and I'm planning on the future, because I understand that when I fail to plan, I'm planning to fail. But you can't live in the future. Can't learn from the future. You can be inspired by the hope of the future to come, but you can't learn from that because it ain't happened yet. Today, I'm in it. I'm doing this based on what was done before. The past is the only thing we can study. And everything we're doing now, every tool that we use comes out of something. And the more we understand of the process that preceded this present, the more we understand about it and how deep it is, and are able to utilize that information to solve the problems that we are confronted with now, and not get inundated with the cult of personality. Those individuals are examples. They are role models. But the process was developed by people as a whole. Each of these individuals represent the best of a particular community. That's why they become heroes. But we understand that the word hero, you know where it comes from?
Where? It
comes from the word Heru. Heru was the first hero. Heru, who was the son of Aser and Aset.
Okay.
Actually, I should say Aset and Asar, because Aset was the one who gave birth to him.
Right.
So he was the son of Asar, Aset, and Asar. Asar was his father. Aset was his mother. Aset, the Greeks would call Isis. Asar, the Greeks would call Osiris.
Mm.
Heru becomes, by the Greeks, Horus.
Mm.
Horus.
Peter tell me he should have been Heru Grant from the Bulls.
Yeah. So Osiris, yeah, Horus, and another word comes from that same word, Hercules.
Mm. I can see that.
Who is a hero.
Right.
Horus is the son of the gods, Isis,
Mm-hmm.
Osiris. Horus also. So when we look at this, it's important for us to understand that until we reconnect with our ancestral stream unapologetically, all these contemporary problems will seem bigger than they are. So, I'm been involved in a couple of discussion groups, one of which you've been to, and one of the younger guys said he was disturbed about this thing that Agent Orange is doing, whether or not he's going to, go along with, the fact that he has not been selected to the degree that Biden, is the president-elect, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So he was really, he was in a quandary. He said, well, what are we going to do if he, I said, we're going to do what we always been doing. We're going to keep on pushing.
It's a fact.
Now, which brings us back to keep on pushing like your leaders tell you to. And I don't mind leaving here to show the world we have no fear, because we're a winner. And everybody knows it too. We're going to keep on pushing like your leaders tell you to. As that blessed day has come, I don't care where you come from. We're going to move on up, moving on up. Lord have mercy, we're moving on up, moving on up. Curtis Mayfield.
Mm.
Yeah, that's one of his songs before Superfly.
Okay.
Yeah. See, when we doing that kind of music, we inspire the community to keep on moving, keep on pushing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we got to do. And we got to do it. We're going to make mistakes. Yo, man, I make them every day. Look, I talk in a manner that's very authoritative, but it's important that I let our audience and that I remind myself that all the contradictions that I'm aware of in the community, because I see them.
Mm-hmm.
I've been bitten by this virus as much as anybody else, and I'm constantly making mistakes. I don't expect anybody to agree with everything that I say or believe in, because I've changed my mind about a whole bunch of stuff depending on how much information I had, or just realizing that I was just flat out wrong, jacked up. I've made I've made a bunch of mistakes, man, but keep on moving, keep on pushing. That's the deal. So, and it's important to do that. But I know I got to do that. I got to keep on pushing. As Marstelle reminded me, she said, don't quit. Don't quit. Keep on pushing. Don't quit. Keep on pushing. When we stumble, get up. But it's our ancestors. Mama Veen, it's Mama Kathy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mama Bert, Mama Nancy, Mama William, Granddaddy William, Mama Vera, Granddaddy George, Uncle Howard. I said Granddaddy William because he was Grandmama Bert's, brother. And he also raised me. So I call him granddaddy. I can call him Uncle William. You know, he was all of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Granddaddy Oliver. All these folks, you know, with the ancestors and all the ones that gave birth to them, great granddaddy Golden, great grandmama Elizabeth. I salute them. They walk with us. Uncle Willie, I salute them. None of them were perfect, but they all loved us.
Mm-hmm.
And they shared their lives with us. And that's where the real love comes. See, you know, some people talk it, but you know, when it comes like, let's do this. Huh? Is it going to get me a new car? Is it going to get me a new suit? Is it going to be easy?
Right.
You got to work at it? I don't know. You got to work at it? Yeah, you got to work at it. Got to do the work. And we hardworking people. We come from some hardworking people.
Right.
And we got to stop asking other people for a job to work on their plantation when we have the capability of developing our own financial institutions, our own industries, all of that. We have to invest in each other and develop that. And when we stop going to other people, asking them to do what only we can do for ourselves, because they ain't going to never treat us as good as they're going to treat their children.
That's a fact.
And a lot of people, you know, the damage that quote unquote integration did to us. But see, the difference is, the problem is we did not understand the difference between anti-segregation and pro-integration.
Mm.
We were in a struggle against segregation because it was we didn't get our proper share of finances from the tax monies that we put into this government, and we didn't get our proper share so we could develop the institutions that we need. We didn't need we were doing okay. We didn't need to be sitting next to white kids solely thinking that solely sitting next to them was going to put us in a better position to get information. And then unfortunately, only after a lot of African schools got shut down and our children were shipped into these white controlled schools that we learned how we was better off without them. There were subjects that we were like linguistics. Our children were regular because in the black schools, we were preparing our children to compete with these adversaries. These adversaries, once we started going to their school, they're not preparing us to compete with their children.
Right.
In fact, disproportionately, our children are being called a problem, and they need the police to come and get them and lock them up.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting ready to ask a question.
I was gonna. It's not so much a joke, but
no, go ahead.
Tighten up a little bit. Do you think during the Montgomery bus boycott, there was some black people that were still riding the bus?
Actually, I can honestly say, based on what I've heard,
mm-hmm.
far and few in between.
Okay.
I mean, I'd be
like, it's gotta be.
If there was, there must have been at least, one Negro, involved, who rode the bus anyway. But the overwhelming majority, and it probably was in stages that it grew. It started, Ebenezer Church, Martin Luther King, that's where the organization started. But it had been building up in the community for quite some time, because of the way we were being treated on those bus lines. And they had enough. They were just looking for the right case to generate the movement,
mm-hmm.
Because there were women before Mama Rosa Parks, who refused to give up their seats.
Mm-hmm.
And but there was one young sister, I can't remember her name right now. She wasn't chosen to take the case to court because she had a baby out of wedlock. There were others that they, for one reason or another, they said, no, not this one. But Miss Rosa, she was an activist who had been involved in developing women's groups and other political activist or strategies for quite some time. She was not New Jack. She had been tired of the stuff for a long time, and in fact, she comes from a line of activists in her family. So when it came that time, you know, it wasn't like, and she wasn't. I think she might have been like in her 30s, you know, or early 40s. She was not an old woman.
What?
You know, no, she's in a substantial part of her life later on. In fact, they ran her out of Montgomery because of her participation in not only Montgomery, but because of her activist participation, you know, in other endeavors, unionizing, organizing unions, and things like that. You know, she was very important and got to the point she couldn't get a job anywhere, you know, and black folks weren't independent enough to hire her. You know, so her and her husband left, and they moved to Detroit.
Mm.
Yeah.
That time must have put age on her. She didn't look like she was in the 30s or 40s.
Yeah, you know, but some people grow gray early, you know. But I might be wrong. Let's say 40s.
All right,
you know,
all right.
But she was not.
She wasn't.
She wasn't in her 60s, you know. She wasn't an old woman.
Right.
She might have been in her late 40s, you know.
Yeah.
But I think also too the style of dress is such that, you know, she appeared more mature.
Right. Okay.
You know, but she wasn't an old woman. You know, some people had like she was a grandmother or something like that. I don't think so.
Got some of those pictures look.
Yeah. So I will say yes. You know, they're gonna be, and always have been. You know, like some of the people who were involved in the enslavement of African people were opportunists, Negro opportunists, who for 30 coins of silver, yeah, I'll help you. And then some of them folks who was opportunists in the process of enslaving other Africans eventually ended up on them boats.
Not bad.
Yeah, we'll take you too. Just join the crowd.
No. Just get
join the queue. Join the queue.
No.
No bag of silver today. You are the silver.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, this was another good one. You want to give people a shout out? Anything that a book, a movie, music, anything to end? Any suggestions?
Book, or movie. Let's say movie.
Okay.
I will say Buck and the Preacher.
Buck and the Preacher.
You know, we were talking about classics, and one of the things that distinguishes classics from other things is that does it bear the test of time. So, as a Western, Ruby Dee, Sidney Poitier, Harry Belafonte, they're the three main characters.
Okay.
And I would suggest anybody who has an opportunity to check out that movie, Buck and the Preacher, and you get an idea in terms of a good Western, and that's historically accurate. It's adventure. It's a good. There's some laughs in it, you know. But it's a good movie, and it has borne the test of time.
Okay.
It's a good movie, and yeah, that's one that I would suggest.
Okay, cool.
In terms of book, I mentioned, and I saw you write it down. The Prince by Machiavelli.
Okay.
One other book that I think is worth reading, by Chancellor Williams. It's called Destruction of Black Civilization. Because a lot of times folks are saying, how did we get in this position? Well, John Henry Clark often reminds us that the series of wars that took place, the invasions of Africa, started in 1800 BC. So by the time these Europeans came along, we had been worn down from a whole series of invasions by people who were envious, just as these brothers are envious of the gold that they flash. These folks were envious of the wealth that was represented by African people, the way we lived, our lifestyles, the way we carried ourselves, the way we dressed, all of that kind of stuff. They were envious of that. They wanted what we had and didn't want to pay for it. And so they developed means militarily to take it, you know. And recently I saw one of these Proud Boys, you know, he says, America conquered, not stolen. So next time somebody steal a car, I can conquered, not stolen. You know, when he snatched the chain from around whoever's neck, conquered, not stolen. When they go into the bank, fill them up, conquered, not stolen.
Stolen.
You know, this you know, euphemisms. You know, people like, you know, yeah. We've gone through a lot of stuff, man. A lot of turmoil, a lot of stuff, and we got a lot more to go. And see, the thing of it is, when we solve one problem, there are going to be other problems.
Gonna be another one.
You know, and because this universe that we're involved in, you know, it's infinite.
Mm-hmm.
I'll leave with this. So when we look up in the sky at night, provided we're not in the cities where the lights are blocking, generally speaking, but get in the area where there are not a whole lot of lights, and you look up in the sky at night, what do you see more than anything else?
Well, I made this mistake before, so I'll say my first answer. My first answer was the stars, but then
Right. But then you know,
the moon.
huh?
Moon.
The moon?
That's what you said. Yeah.
No, more than anything else.
Oh, excuse me. Darkness.
Yes. So that darkness represents the unknown. The stars represent the known. So like a cartoon character, you know, gets the idea over their head. You see that what?
Light bulb.
Light bulb, which represents knowledge. I got an idea. Bing, light. So, you know, the foreigners said, oh, these Africans, they're worshiping the sun. No, we're not worshiping it, but the sun is a symbol of enlightenment. In fact, even in the word enlightenment, what it means to know, to be informed, you know. All right. So enlightenment. There, it is said that there are more stars in the sky than there are grains of sand on this planet. There are more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on this earth. But exponentially more is darkness. The overwhelming majority of the universe is darkness. But that darkness is alive. If it was not alive, we could not live in it. Nothing would live in it. It sustains, it connects everything. The stars do not give birth to stars. Nebulas, dark holes in the midst of blackness gives birth to stars. The unknown gives birth to the known. The unknown feeds the known. So we should never be overly intimidated by what we do not know, because there will always be much more that we don't know than we will ever know. But we should not be intimidated, because the unknown gives birth to the known. The unknown feeds the known. So as we step into the future, we got to understand that in the midst of all this blackness, we got to have the wherewithal to understand that when I step, I'm either going to keep on walking or I'm going to learn how to fly.
That's what's up.
Forward ever, backwards never.
You know it.
We look back, but we move forward.
Yes, sir.
All right. I'll give my quick suggestions. Jay Williams' book, Life is Not an Accident, talks about some of the things he went through after his bike ride and just his upbringing in life and just ways of not giving up and continuing to move forward. And I believe that that's something, that book kind of touched me because that's something that I feel like I had trouble with once I've had, not that I'm a star athlete, but when I had my 2 injuries, it was good to hear or to see that someone of that stature also had those same mental lapse, that they went through when they had these horrific injuries, or just something that's taken from you. So that was good. I've been listening to Nipsey's last album, Victory Lap, and Conway the Machine, From a King to a God. Those are the 2 albums.
Kanye?
Oh no, Conway the Machine. Conway the Machine. Yeah, he has an album called From a King to a God. Very good.
Text me that.
Okay, we'll do.
And Nipsey's title as well.
All right, you got to do the homework.
Yes, I got homework to do.
I want to review.
Yes, and so we got 2 weeks. So we're broadcasting on the 1st and 3rd Thursdays, and we want you guys to like us and
share and subscribe.
Yes, indeed, we want you to do that. We need that, and at the same time, we encourage you to look for other podcasts that are involved in the communiversity, because there's a growing number of folk, who have not only credentials but have studied the material that we need to free us from the shackles of our minds.
Fuck the grannies. All right.
All right. Jam.
Mask on, 6 feet away. Stay away.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Stay healthy, y'all.
And next week, I know back-to-back weeks we went music, so next week we're gonna try to keep it on health. We'll talk about health, especially that's things that are going on in the community.
Yeah.
All
right.
Yes, I cool.
AJ cool.
So that we could be free. We're on a march, and the march is for freedom. The struggle is still going on. We're on a march, and the march is for freedom. The struggle is